It starts the same way every time: a glance, a spark, a conversation that feels like fate, and suddenly, she's all in. Again. It doesn't matter if his name is Michael or Daniel or someone she just met at a cafe. The rhythm is always the same: fast, intense, magnetic. For a while, it even feels right, until it doesn't. Because slowly, almost imperceptibly, the shift begins. The messages come less often, the warmth cools. She starts questioning if she imagined everything. Did she misread the signs? Was it too much too soon? And once again, she finds herself alone. Not just without him, but without herself, drained, confused, quietly questioning her own worth. Different face. Same ending, different voice, same silence. She tells herself she'll be wiser next time, more careful, more guarded. But then next time comes, and her heart opens like it always does, hoping, reaching, believing. And when it falls apart like it always does, the shame sets in. She starts to wonder if the problem is her. Maybe she's too much, too intense, too soft, too quick to give, too hopeful. But deep down, the question gnaws at her like a wound that never closes. Why do I keep choosing the wrong man? Why does she keep loving men who don't choose her back with the same depth? Men who love her inconsistently, who show up when it's convenient and disappear when it counts. Men who promise the world but can't offer stability. Men who admire her strength but wilt when asked to match it. It's not about one bad relationship. It's a pattern, a cycle she can't seem to break. And the worst part of her is starting to believe this is all she'll ever get. But what if it's not about them? What if the real answer isn't out there, in their hands, their hearts, their choices? What if it's buried somewhere much deeper within her? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what she's been calling it all along: fate. Bad timing, bad luck, bad men. She tells herself it just hasn't worked out yet, that maybe the universe is saving the right one for later, that all these heartbreaks are lessons wrapped in disguise. But what if they're not random at all? What if they're symptoms? Symptoms of a deeper truth she hasn't been ready to face. The truth is, these relationships aren't accidents, they're mirrors, reflections of something quietly operating beneath the surface, a hidden script, an internal program. She's not cursed, she's conditioned. Somewhere deep inside her, something familiar keeps pulling her toward what wounds her. She isn't chasing love, she's chasing recognition, validation, a home that looks like the chaos she's known. A man who reflects the unhealed version of herself, and as long as that part remains unconscious, she'll keep mistaking pain for passion. This isn't about blaming herself, it's about waking up. Because the unconscious doesn't care about her intentions. It only knows what's been wired into her story, what feels familiar, what matches the emotional imprint of her past. And if chaos was her childhood, calm will feel foreign. If rejection was normal, affection will feel suspicious. And so she repeats, not because she wants to suffer, but because suffering feels like home. That's the trap. The bad boy, the emotionally unavailable man, the one who texts only when it suits him, the one who asks for her soul but offers none of his in return. They're not just men, they're symbols of a deeper wound still waiting to be seen. But once she begins to see it, not just intellectually, but viscerally, spiritually, everything can change. Because the moment she brings that unconscious pattern into the light, she doesn't just break a cycle. She begins to write a new story. One where love isn't earned through pain, one where presence doesn't have to be chased, one where she finally becomes the one she's been waiting for. It's easy to believe attraction is about preference, a type, a vibe, a spark. But Carl Jung showed us something far deeper, far more uncomfortable. He called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've buried, denied, or disowned, not just the darkness we hide from the world, but the truths we've hidden from ourselves. And here's the catch: what we repress, we attract. That woman who keeps falling for the wrong man isn't reckless. She's unconscious. She's magnetized not by her desires, but by her wounds, the pieces of herself she hasn't made peace with. The ones she cast into the shadows long ago and hoped would disappear. But they didn't. They took form, they took shape, and they started showing up in the men she dates. The emotionally unavailable man? He's not just a red flag. He's a projection of her own neglected inner child, still waiting to be chosen, still chasing love in all the wrong places. The charming liar? He represents the part of her that learned early on that honesty doesn't guarantee love, that pretending might just be safer. The man who withholds affection unless she performs. He mirrors the belief that she must earn love by proving her worth again and again. None of this is random. It's archetypal, it's personal, it's sacred. Because until she turns inward and meets her own shadow, she will keep falling for its reflection. The truth is, we are drawn to what we don't yet understand, and what she doesn't understand is that her heart keeps reaching for something familiar, not because it feels good, but because it feels known. So she calls it love. But it's really recognition. And recognition without healing is a trap. It's not about choosing better men. It's about reclaiming the parts of herself she thought she had to hide to be loved. Because once she accepts her own shadow, her anger, her grief, her fear, her need, those wounds lose their power to choose for her. And what used to feel magnetic starts to feel repulsive. That's how healing works. Quietly, deeply, without needing to burn this time. Every story has a starting point, and for many women, it begins long before the first boyfriend, long before the first heartbreak. It starts with the first man who ever held power over her emotions, her father. Whether he was loving or absent, gentle or volatile, present or simply unpredictable, it doesn't matter. What matters is the emotional blueprint he left behind. A silent script she internalized, one that whispered, "This is what love looks like. This is what you must accept to be loved." Jung knew this well. He spoke of the father complex, a psychic imprint that shapes a woman's understanding of men's safety and self-worth. And when that early connection is distorted, incomplete, or emotionally charged, she doesn't outgrow it, she reenacts it. Not intentionally, not consciously, but through the men she chooses, the boundaries she lacks, the pain she normalizes. She falls for men who echo the same ache her father left behind, not because she wants to relive it, but because her soul wants to resolve it. That's what makes it so devastating and so persistent. A woman whose father was emotionally distant may find herself drawn to men who never fully show up. A woman who had to earn her father's affection might endlessly overextend herself in relationships, trying to be enough for someone who was never built to receive her. It's not love. It's repetition. And repetition can feel like fate until you name it. That's why her heartbreak isn't about him, the latest man who vanished, betrayed, or disappointed. It's about a deeper wound that keeps asking to be healed. And until she sits with that first Akithi one she was too young to process and too loyal to reject, she'll keep assigning that script to every man who follows. But when she sees it, truly sees it, not with blame, but with clarity, something changes. She no longer begs to be chosen. She no longer dances for approval. She no longer chases after crumbs and calls it a feast. Because she realizes the love she was denied wasn't proof of her unworthiness. It was the beginning of a journey. A journey not to be completed by a man, but to be reconciled within herself. And when she makes peace with the father wound, the men who remind her of it stop feeling like home. They start feeling like history. He doesn't walk in with confidence. He walks in with a wound. A subtle sadness behind his eyes, a darkness he never talks about, a softness that feels like depth but is really just damage wearing a charming disguise. And she feels drawn to him, instantly, deeply. Not because he makes her feel safe, but because he makes her feel needed, and there's a difference. She tells herself he's different, sensitive, complicated, that underneath all that silence there's a man worth waiting for. A man who, with just enough patience, just enough love, might finally become everything she's ever dreamed of. But she isn't loving him, she's loving his potential. She's writing a future in her head while he's still stuck in his past. She sees who he could be while ignoring who he's showing her he already is. And the more broken he is, the more she gives. Time, attention, energy, forgiveness. She listens to his childhood stories and blames his pain for his behavior. She excuses the neglect, the emotional distance, the chaos because she believes in his healing even when he doesn't. And that's the trap. Because what feels like love is often compassion misdirected, empathy tangled with fantasy. She mistakes his pain for depth, his inconsistency for mystery, his detachment for strength. But here's the truth. Pain doesn't make someone profound, healing does. And most of these men aren't on a path to heal, they're on a loop, a cycle, one where they attract nurturers, not partners, one where they consume affection but never learn to reciprocate it. Jung might say she's not just falling in love, she's projecting her unhealed animus, the masculine energy within her that's still fragmented, still trying to prove that if she saves someone else, maybe she'll finally feel whole herself. But love isn't a project, and broken isn't romantic. A woman who loves the broken man more than herself ends up shattered too. And one day, she'll wake up and realize she wasn't building a future, she was clinging to a dream that was never hers to begin with. She doesn't wear a cape, but she tries to save him anyway. Quietly, steadily, desperately. She falls for men who need rescuing emotionally, financially, spiritually, men who are lost, hurting, or simply unavailable, and she tells herself it's love, that she's strong enough to carry both their weights, that if she just gives more, heals more, holds on longer, he'll transform. But Carl Jung said something different. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And that includes loving others as a distraction from loving yourself. Because what looks like selflessness is often self-avoidance. She pours into him not because he's her match, but because he's her mission. Saving him gives her a purpose, a role, a sense of identity that says, if I can fix him, maybe I'm finally enough. But she's not healing him. She's protecting herself, from the silence of being alone, from the discomfort of turning inward, from the terrifying question, what would I find if I stopped saving others and started saving myself? The savior complex is seductive. It dresses up codependency in the costume of loyalty. It whispers that pain is proof of love, that endurance means devotion. But it's not love, it's entrapment. And the man she tries to rescue, he doesn't change. Because he doesn't have to. She's already doing all the work, holding the relationship together, apologizing for his wounds, explaining his behavior to friends, making excuses he never asked her to make but never stopped her from making either. She thinks she's helping, but she's enabling. And every time she saves him, she sacrifices a part of herself, her time, her joy, her identity. What she doesn't see is that love isn't about saving, it's about seeing, being present with someone who's doing their own work, their own healing, their own inner excavation. The woman who tries to save everyone ends up abandoned by herself. But the moment she stops reaching outward and turns inward, that's when the real transformation begins. Not his, hers. She says she wants peace, a stable love, a calm presence, a relationship that feels safe. But when it shows up, she pulls away. She finds herself uninterested, restless, even bored. The man who offers her consistency suddenly seems too predictable, too easy, too nice. And she can't explain why. But the truth is, peace feels foreign when chaos raised you. She doesn't know how to receive softness because she was forged in fire, in a home where love was inconsistent, where affection had conditions, where silence meant something bad was coming, and kindness was often followed by the cold. She learned to read between the lines, not because she was intuitive, but because she had to be. So now, when a man comes along who doesn't trigger those old alarms, she doesn't feel safe, she feels numb. And when another one shows up who's hot and cold, intense one day and distant, the next the body lights up like it's found something familiar. That's not chemistry, that's survival. Her nervous system has learned to confuse unpredictability with passion. The emotional roller coaster feels like love not because it is, but because it mimics the first love she ever knew, the one she had to chase, the one she had to earn. And now, she's addicted to the highs and lows, the dramatic texts, the heart-pounding waits, the apologies that feel like validation, the reunions that feel like redemption. But this isn't love, it's adrenaline. It's trauma reenacted in real time. Because when you grow up in dysfunction, anything that doesn't feel like a fight starts to feel suspicious. When love is loud and messy, stillness feels empty. And yet, peace isn't boring, it's unfamiliar. She doesn't need more passion, she needs healing, a new baseline, a rewiring, one that teaches her nervous system that safety is not a threat, that calm can be deep, that love doesn't need to hurt to be real. When she begins to crave peace, not chaos, she'll know her healing has begun. And that's when everything starts to change. Carl Jung spoke of a force within every woman, not visible, not external, but powerful beyond measure. The animusha inner masculine. It isn't about gender or identity, it's about energy, structure, direction, the voice inside that says, I can protect myself, I can stand my ground, I can choose myself before I'm chosen. But what happens when that animus is undeveloped, when it's wounded, fragmented, or shaped entirely by past pain? She begins to seek in men what she has not yet awakened in herself. And that's when things go wrong. Because instead of choosing from self-worth, she chooses from lack, from fear, from emptiness. Her animus, unformed, doesn't guide her, it misguides her. And she gravitates toward men who mirror her own inner instability. Men who dominate, manipulate, disappear, or disappoint. Not because she's weak, but because her inner masculine voice is still faint, still uncertain, still trying to find its footing in a world that taught her to look outward before ever looking within. Jung believed the animus was not just an internal archetype, it was the gateway to a woman's sovereignty. When healthy, it helps her discern, helps her protect her boundaries, helps her say no when something violates her spirit. It offers presence, structure, clarity. But if that part of her was never modeled, if all she knew of the masculine was abandonment, aggression, or emotional absence, then that's what her psyche seeks out, again and again, not by choice, but by unconscious design. To heal it, she must stop searching outside herself for completion. She must turn inward. Begin listening for the voice she once silenced, the one that knows what she deserves. Not a savior, not a project, but a partner, an equal. The more she integrates her animus, the less drawn she is to men who represent her lack. The more she knows how to lead herself, the less she chases others to lead her. And in that integration, something extraordinary happens. She doesn't fall for dominance disguised as masculinity anymore. She begins to attract and reflect real strength, the kind that stands still in chaos, the kind that walks away when needed, the kind that no longer confuses abandonment for desire. Because now, she carries what she once looked for in someone else. And that changes everything. Freud once said something quietly devastating. We are compelled to repeat the past, not because we enjoy it, but because we haven't healed it. And this is what she's living, again and again. Each wrong man is not a mistake, he's an echo, a familiar note in a melody she's been humming since childhood, a reenactment of a wound she's never fully named but always felt, deep in her chest. Like a question that keeps asking itself, maybe this time it will end differently. This is the repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to resolve what went unresolved, to rewrite the story by casting a different man in the same role and praying he'll change the ending. But he doesn't. Because he can't. Because it was never about him, it was always about her, her hope, her history, her hunger for emotional redemption. She keeps falling for the man who leaves because, once upon a time, someone left when she needed them to stay. She keeps loving the man who withholds, because love was once something she had to earn. So she tries again, and again. Not because she doesn't know better, but because her soul is trying to finish a sentence no one ever let her complete. But trauma doesn't resolve itself through repetition. It only deepens. And the most painful part? Every time it ends the same way, she doesn't just lose him, she loses faith in men, in love, in herself. Because each failed attempt feels like a personal failure, proof that maybe she really is unlovable, too intense, too much. But it's not her. It's the loop. A loop she didn't create, but one she must break. And to break it, she has to stop trying to win where she once lost. She has to stop seeking closure from those who only know how to reopen wounds. Because the healing she's searching for isn't in rewriting the past. It's in refusing to relive it. She sees the signs. The late replies, the hot and cold energy, the subtle dismissals disguised as jokes, the emotional distance wrapped in charm. And yet, she stays. Because somewhere deep in her wiring she's learned to see red flags not as warnings but as invitations, as proof that there's something to earn, something to prove, something worth fighting for. This is what happens when self-abandonment becomes second nature. When a woman learns to override her instincts in favor of fantasy, she doesn't run from dysfunction, she romanticizes it. She calls it chemistry, soul ties, karmic connections. But in reality, she's just playing a role she's played her whole life. The one who stays too long. The one who makes excuses. The one who mistakes adrenaline for affection. Why? Because safety is foreign. Because the man who calls every day, who communicates clearly, who actually shows up feels off. Too simple, too calm, too easy. But love is not supposed to be a battlefield. The idea that pain proves passion is a lie passed down through generations of women who were taught to suffer quietly and love loudly. So she overlooks what should make her leave and clings to what should make her run. She tells herself the man who can't commit is just scared, that the one who withdraws is just not ready, that if she's patient, if she gives more, if she becomes the woman he needs, he'll stay. But that's not love. That's negotiation. That's sacrifice disguised as hope. And every time she ignores a red flag, she betrays herself just a little more. Until one day she no longer recognizes the woman in the mirror, because she's built a relationship on hope and stayed in it through denial. But here's the truth. Red flags don't mean try harder. They mean pay attention. And when she starts loving herself more than the idea of fixing someone else, those flags stop looking romantic. They start looking like a door, one she can finally walk through, and this time close behind her. He doesn't make her feel anxious. He doesn't play games. He texts when he says he will. He shows up. And suddenly, she's bored? It doesn't make sense. He's kind, attentive, available, the kind of man she swore she wanted. And yet, something inside her feels flat, restless, suspicious. Because real love feels calm, and to her, calm feels like danger. When you've been shaped by chaos, silence feels like a warning. When you've been trained to earn love, peace feels like disinterest. When your nervous system is used to high drama, adrenaline becomes mistaken for connection. And that's the wound. She thinks if her heart's not racing, it must not be real. If there's no challenge, it must not be deep. If she's not anxious, then maybe she's not attracted. But that's not chemistry, that's conditioning. She learned to associate love with tension, to believe that unpredictability meant passion, that the man who ignores her must be special, that the relationship that hurts must be intense. Because in her past, the people she loved also made her feel forgotten. And now, safety feels like something's missing. She doesn't realize the spark she chases is often a trauma responser, body lighting up because it recognizes the pattern, not because it's love, but because it's familiar. So when someone arrives who doesn't trigger her old wounds, she doubts it. She thinks, where's the fire? But love, real love, doesn't set you on fire. It warms you, slowly, steadily, quietly. And that warmth doesn't thrill her, not yet, because she hasn't learned to trust it. But one day, she will. When she stops mistaking chaos for connection, when she stops needing intensity to feel seen, then she'll understand. Peace is not the absence of love. It's the presence of healing. It doesn't happen during the fight, not during the betrayal, not even when he leaves. It happens after, in the quiet, when the phone doesn't ring, when the house is still, when there's nothing left to hold on to but her own reflection. And for the first time, she doesn't ask, why did he do this to me? She asks something far more powerful. Why did I allow it? That's the awakening. Not a scream, not a collapse. Just a slow, soul-deep realization that the pain she's feeling didn't begin with him. He was just the final echo. The last lesson. She looks back and sees the signs. Not just in this relationship, but in all of them. How many times she silenced her intuition. How often she dimmed her light to make someone else feel comfortable. How long she stayed when her spirit was begging her to go. And it hits her. She wasn't just hurt. She was unavailable to herself. She kept choosing men who mirrored her wounds because she didn't yet believe she was worthy of more. But this pain is different. Not because it's sharper, but because it's clearer. She's tired. Not just of the heartbreak, but of abandoning herself to avoid it. This breakup didn't break her. It woke her up. And waking up isn't easy. It's not a gentle process. It's raw, ugly, sacred. It demands honesty. It asks her to sit in the discomfort of her own patterns and finally say, no more. Not to men, to herself, to the version of her that believed love had to be earned through suffering, to the girl who mistook emotional starvation for devotion. This moment isn't the end. It's the beginning of a love story that starts where it always should have, within. Carl Jung called it individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not unbreakable, but integrated. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about coming home to the parts of herself she once disowned, the shadow she buried, the animus she neglected, the power she gave away to anyone who looked like love. And now she stops running. She turns inward and meets her pain without flinching. She holds her rage without shame. She listens to the silence she used to fill with noise, with people, with men who could never meet her. This isn't a healing montage. It's not polished. It's not pretty. It's her sitting alone on a Tuesday night realizing she doesn't need to text him. It's her deleting the number, not in anger, but in peace. It's her standing in front of the mirror and finally seeing someone worth staying for. She starts making different choices, not because she's changed her mind, but because she's changed her relationship with herself. She no longer needs the rush of being chosen. She chooses herself deliberately, daily. Her animus is no longer a whisper, it's a guide. It helps her set boundaries with love. It helps her say no without guilt. It helps her say yes to the life she's always wanted but never believed she deserved. And that marriage? The one she thought she needed from someone else? She gives it to herself first. A vow made not in ceremony but in silence. I will not abandon myself again, not for love, not for fear, not for anyone. This is the inner union, the sacred alignment. She is no longer half of anything. She is whole. And for the first time, love is no longer a place to hide. It's a place she can meet someone freely, without losing herself in the process. He still exists. The emotionally unavailable man, the charmer with the sad eyes, the one with a broken story and a beautiful smile. He still shows up in her inbox, in her path, in her memories. But something's different now. He doesn't move her anymore. Where once she would have leaned in, now she leans back. Where she once saw potential, now she sees a pattern. Where she once felt drawn, she now feels done. It's not bitterness. It's clarity. The man who once activated all her longing now feels small. Not because he's less, but because she's no longer willing to shrink to meet him. The games, the mixed signals, the constant second-guessing, she sees it for what it is. Emotional unavailability disguised as depth. And she's not hungry for that anymore. Because something in her healed. The part that used to chase. The part that found meaning in being misunderstood. The part that thought, if I love him hard enough, he'll change. She knows better now. She doesn't want someone to rescue. She doesn't want someone who might show up. She wants a man who already has. A man who's met his own shadow. A man who can sit in silence without shrinking. A man who doesn't need her to break just to feel whole. And because she has changed, her love language has changed. It's no longer drama, it's presence. It's no longer intensity, it's consistency. She doesn't fall for potential anymore. She waits for alignment. The emotionally unavailable man hasn't disappeared, but his spell has, because the woman she's become doesn't want to be chosen by someone who only loves halfway. She wants to be met, fully, equally, soul to soul. And now that she knows what that feels like within herself, she will never again settle for less than that in someone else. In the beginning, all she wanted was love. To be seen, chosen, protected, to be held so completely that the ache inside her finally went quiet. She searched for it in others, in their eyes, their promises, their presence. She looked for it in late-night texts and first kisses and the spaces between red flags. But now, she sees it clearly. It was never about finding the right man. It was about remembering the woman she was before she thought she had to be anything less. The one who didn't need to be rescued. The one who didn't abandon herself just to stay. The one who no longer needed love to hurt, to feel real. Because this journey, this long, aching, beautiful becoming wasn't about finding someone to complete her. It was about becoming complete on her own. She's not waiting anymore. Not for the apology, not for the closure, not for the man who might one day be ready. She has already arrived. And now, she doesn't fall. She chooses, with open eyes, with a full heart, with a calm that cannot be shaken by inconsistent hands. She chooses peace over passion that burns and disappears. She chooses truth over potential. She chooses men who meet her where she stands, not where she used to kneel. The woman who once begged to be loved now sits in her own presence and knows she is enough. She has walked through her shadow, sat in her silence, married the parts of herself she once ran from, and now everything is different. She doesn't chase, she doesn't settle. She doesn't confuse chaos with connection or mistake absence for mystery. She knows who she is. She knows what love is. And she will never again trade her wholeness for someone else's comfort, because now she is the one she was searching for. Not a half, not a role, not a placeholder for someone else's healing. A woman, complete, conscious, unshakable. And when love does come, and it will, it won't be to fix her. It will be to witness her, to rise with her, to stand beside the woman who no longer needs to be chosen, because she already chose herself. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.